I'm Damon Stone. I grew up with blues music and blues dancing. 6 years old, running around the house after having listened to a song repeat again and again and again in an old cartoon. It was a jazz song, originally sung by Ella Fitzgerald, 5 O'Clock Whistle. My grandmother seeing me run around the house and hearing the song that I was singing, asked me to think what the song was about. I, having no idea of subtext or innuendo or anything along those lines, thought it was about a girl who was sad because her dad didn't come home last night because the whistle that was supposed to let them know that it was time to go home from work was broken. That's not what it was. He was having an affair. That was his excuse that he chose to use. But once she was assured that it had been corrupted, she would ask me whether or not I wanted to learn how to dance to that kind of music the way that they used to dance. And, being 6, I was like, yeah. So I learned solo Charleston and some solo blues steps that day, and that sort of just became a normal way that my grandparents and I interacted. And then eventually it was like, go dance with grandma, go dance with your aunt, that sort of got me into the partner side of it. So swing and blues and just general jazz dancing and stuff like that. That's where I come from. I'm older than a lot of you. I'm certainly older than most people think that I look. So I was around hip hop started becoming an actual thing also, and that was sort of the dance that was, my dance, and these were the things that I did with my grandparents. And then when we started doing battles, and somebody would pull out stuff that I couldn't do, I would go to this stuff, and it was stuff that they had never seen before. But it was in most ways the roots of the same kinds of movements that we were doing. That really sort of got me to the point where it's just I've been dancing pretty much nonstop for the last 20 years. 5 or 6 years. We'll go with that.
You're only 11?
Yeah. Plus or minus 31 years. So yeah. That is sort of how I got into this stuff from a cultural perspective. When I was in my 20s, swing dancing started becoming really popular. Early to mid 90s where I lived, and then late 90s pretty much across the U.S. And I think I taught my first actual out-of-town blues lesson in, I think, 97. So that's when I officially started teaching blues. Prior to that, probably about a year or two, it was just sharing with people because they liked what I did when the swing band started playing the blues music, slow down stuff. So that's sort of when I started getting really interested in the official history of these things, as opposed to my personal connection to it. And that's when I started traveling to different hotspots for blues music throughout the U.S. and then started doing trips to D.C. for the American Heritage archives and stuff at the Smithsonian. And of course, Library of Congress. And that's sort of my general background. I got into all of this, and now I will open it up to questions.
Socially, did you struggle, or how did you handle when raised, knowing that other people like hip hop dance was drastically different than what you experienced in a social setting? How did you respond to that? I know you mentioned bringing your own dance, but did you ever feel unsuccessful because you couldn't wrap your head around dancing that way?
No.
That's good.
I never felt successful. No, I mean, it's... You got that on film, right? No, honestly, I don't. I don't ever feel unsuccessful when it comes to things artistic, because I don't come at it from a place of, I need to get this right. It comes from a place of, I need to get this. need to feel it. And if what is happening physically out on the floor is incorrect, that's just a matter of time. That will literally happen as long as I get it here, right? And for me, this was really easy because my parents listened to jazz, they listened to blues, listened to soul, listened to funk, listened to R&B. My grandparents listened to jazz, they listened to blues, they listened to soul, and old school rhythm and blues. So that was the music that I was raised listening to from them. You know, the stuff that I chose when I had, I was in my room listening to my radio. It was the new music of hip hop. It was, R&B. It was a little bit of the latter parts of funk. And so I never really made a distinction between them. They were just different facets. This is what I did with my family, and this is what I did with my friends. So, I always felt it here, so I never worried about getting it out there. I know that people who were not raised with that, for them, it's really about getting it here first, understanding it intellectually, which allows them to really hear and feel the music and the dancing from a whole perspective, as opposed to, I hear the beat, or, you know what, this is the kind of music that I'm used to listening to, and that makes me hear this music this way, right? If you grew up with rock and roll and you listen to blues, what you're going to hear is the guitar, right? If you grew up listening to classical music, what you're going to hear is the piano. A lot of it just depends on what you've been trained as you grew up with. So that's the reason why a lot of people coming into blues dancing or swing dancing or salsa, if you're not Latino or grew up in a Latino neighborhood, these things are so much more difficult because you haven't been exposed to them at a really early age, so you hear things differently. Which makes sense when you think about languages, right? So if you have reached the age of 12 or later and you've never heard anybody speak Swedish or Scottish or Cantonese or Mandarin or Thai, and you're talking to somebody, you're only hearing part of what they're actually saying. There are sounds in there that your ear can't distinguish, which is really not that different. It's okay, you are from Texas, and you go to California or New York or, Minnesota, and someone starts trying to talk with a Texas twang, and you're just everything that you're doing is wrong. Every aspect of that accent is wrong. And you're no, I sound just like you. You just want to pat them on the head. No, every single thing that you were doing is literally incorrect. And the reason why is because they can't hear the different levels of intonation. Right, and it's the same thing if you're from Texas and you're trying to talk like someone from California. If you're from Texas and you're trying to talk like someone from the East Coast or from the Midwest, and you're trying to talk like someone from the South, your ear has not been acclimatized to that sort of thing. And so there's certain sounds that you just don't get until you had a certain amount of just immersion in it. And so blues music is the same way.
So, moving back to you talked about the first class that you taught outside your local area in what you'd call blues dance, blues Indian dances, was in 1997. I'd like to talk a little bit about the origin in our subculture of the term blues dance. What you know about where that came from, its definition, how its definition has evolved in our subculture.
In the period of time that I was doing this in San Francisco, it was just slow dancing. That's what we called it. That's what we did because it was to the slow music. We didn't make any distinction between it and any other kind of slow dance that happened to fit the slow music that was playing. But at that particular point, we also didn't make much distinction between swing dancing. It's like if we were doing a particular dance and it had a name, we'd say, yeah, doing Lindy Hop, doing the Lindy. If it was East Coast Swing, doing East Coast Swing. It was, you named a specific thing, or you just, said, it's music, I'm just dancing. And that was really the same way that it was when I was growing up. Like, I was frequently not given names for any particular thing. It was just do this thing, do that thing, do this step. But blues started being applied to it in more of the later 90s. Originally coming, as far as I'm aware, originally being assigned to the just general, hey, we're Lindy Hoppers and it's late night and no one wants to swing out at 313 beats per minute anymore trying to reenact Hell's Poppin'. So 3 a.m., let's go ahead and put on, the slow belt buckle, polishing, belly rubbing, get down music. But the idea of, blues came from Harangue and their blues night. And that was named that pretty much because it was trying to evoke a bluesy feel. The music was sometimes blues, but it would also frequently fit into the more jukey kind of thing. So you would hear James Brown, you would hear slow jazz, but most of it was in that sort of like funky, slow, gritty kind of sound.
Can you do a really quick, brief description of Harangue?
Harangue is a Harangue is a Lindy Hop camp, primarily Lindy Hop, in Harangue, Sweden. There's a little fishing village randomly on sort of like the southeast coast of the country. They brought out Almonds and then later Frankie Manning and then Norman Miller and Don Hampton and a bunch of the old time Savoy Lindy Hoppers. And it has sort of become the swing dance mecca for generations of dancers. Once a week they had a blues night, and that started sometime in the early 90s, I think. And they called it that not because they were referring to the dance that they were doing as blues dancing or the music as blues dancing. It was the blues night because it was, trying to evoke the same feeling. Not that they were laying claim to what they play or what they dance as being the music or the dance. And so that sort of carried on to the late nights at swing dance events. It started happening. The blues room was the room that you went when you got tired of dancing really fast and you wanted to, dance slow. So that's sort of where that root comes from. And, it sort of like evolves a bit as people who were unaware of all of that and what was in trying to invoke, sort of doing house parties in different parts of the country, hearing other people talk about, I'm going to the blues room and assuming that was meant in reference to the music that was being played, which was frequently not blues. I'd say probably less than 50% of it actually had any real blues as a part of it. And most of the dancing they'd done was not blues. And so it started being misapplied because people didn't know that that's not what that was in reference to. And so later, Heidi Fight and Charlie Fuller and, other instructors around the country started like, wait. We call this, blues room or, what have you, but that's supposed to be about more of a feel. These specific things is the blues music, and these specific other things that we were doing to that are the blues dances.
When was that time period?
That started, the very first hints of that started around 99. And it was around 2003 when we started actively correcting people versus just having, places where we taught and advertised, a blues dance class where the music was blues and the teaching of the dances were for blues, which also came to a head in 2004 with Cheap Thrills and then the St. Louis Lindy Blues Exchange, which just ended up becoming eventually just the St. Louis Blues Exchange, which all of that fed into the event that became Blues Shout. So.
Which, just for clarification purposes, is currently the pinnacle blues dance event in Vermont, basically.
We tried.
I have a couple of questions, and I'm not sure how they fit. So if one of them doesn't fit, you don't have to answer.
Let's start with one and we'll go from there.
Okay. So having danced growing up on the East Coast and having been on the West Coast for the past 5 years and kind of having a lot of the dancing trickle down from Brenda and Barry, their description of blues dancing is very different from the rest of the country. And
do you mind if I ask when you say very different, do you mean from a technical level or literally what they are referring to as blues dance is different?
both, I think, but more the latter. I'm not sure how to. Well, for transparency's sake, like the last conversation I had with Brenda, I mentioned something about ballroom, and she said, "I've never seen any vintage videos of that. I've never seen that anywhere. Like I don't know where that term comes from." And she was kind of demonstrating Peabody and trotting, and had never heard of strutting except for like in modern elements, I guess, or modern understandings of blues dance. And so I'm not sure what my question is. I've been thinking about this for a while. I guess how does that all fit in? I mean, and you said like there was a lot of like this was slow down music, and so where does strutting fit in? Where does the faster styles of blues,
Sure.
like Latin blues, fit in?
Yeah. Well, to start with, blues music in of itself is not slow, and blues dancing is not slow. It was the idea of the feel of blues is slow, no matter how fast the song is, because of the things that they're doing with the rhythms, right? So to make it really stretch your mind, the kind of dancing that I do that is that I would refer to by a category of like open blues. So it's being danced a lot in open position, would by my grandparents be referred to as fast dancing. Even when the song I'm dancing it to, I'm dancing both in halftime and probably is not much faster than 130 beats per minute.
Can you say more about why?
Yeah, maybe. My understanding from talking to them.
I'm taking notes.
Sure.
They might not be weird.
I didn't think that you were. Is that it has to do with a distinction between the belt buckle polishing or belly rubbing. And these were actual terms that they used to apply in the same way that you might say, grinding, or, your parents might have said bump and grind, or whatever. It's that term, actually all of those terms were still in use, in the 20s and 30s. Those aren't new terms. But it's really just sort of a distinction of, like, for them, the slow dancing stuff were close dances. And even when the song was really fast, if you were close, you danced slow. And even if the song was a moderate tempo, if you were dancing in more open position, it was fast dancing. Again, not really having anything to do with the tempo.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about shredding, and I'm like, I feel interested even a little bit.
My dad does a dance called Texas Hop. It is from California, not from Texas. Also, Texas Shuffle and Texas Tommy, all from California. Which is a whole little side thing that if you're interested in, we can go into later. But to stay on point, he says it is an 8-count dance.
It's not.
It's done in 6 an 8-count dance because there are 8 steps, and he counts each step.
Oh, okay.
Because in his mind, and this has actually been really indicative from all the old timers, and my dad will never see this video, so he won't hear me. But all of them, they don't count music. Like, the rhythm is the rhythm, and you hear it, and why would you need to count the rhythm? Because it's right freaking there. Like, literally, you need to be deaf not to hear the rhythm. At least for them, that is a truism. So the counting is just, I'm telling you how many counts there are for the move, which means how many times you're stepping. So an 8 count means you're counting to 8, and by the time you hit 8, you've done all the foot movements you need to do. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? But also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is also an 8 count. All those in 6 beats. There's not 1, 2, 3, and 4. Why would you say and? That's a step. Why aren't you counting step?
That makes sense to me. Okay.
So fast dancing, slow dancing, blues, right? Do you see how it's really a cultural thing? And if you think about whatever culture you're from, you have things that are just cultural assumptions based on the universal understanding of everybody in that culture. Like, it doesn't need to be explained because everybody just knows. So, there you go. As to why they would refer to certain dances that they say are blues that are not viewed as blues in other places, or they would say that is not blues, but it is in other places. A lot of it just has to do with where you're from, right? So, you talk to somebody from New York 20 years ago, and you said you did hip hop, they'd be like, I don't even know what that is. What kind of dancing is hip hop? Are you a breaker? Can you break? If not, then I just don't care. Are you a b-boy? Are you a b-girl? That's what you do. But if you're from where I'm from, which is the West Coast, and you say, hip hop at that point, and they're like, oh, so you do funk. 20 years ago, it was all, pop, rock, glide, like all the stuff that did not involve getting down onto the floor was, funk styles.
Yep.
Because they all come directly out of funk music, and that was the roots of hip hop. It was hitting the breaks in funk songs and carrying them through, and then hitting the breaks in disco songs, in some cases blurring and mixing in and out. And those breaks is where you get the term breakdancing from on the East Coast. So this idea, like strutting, is a dance that, as far as I know, was only done in Memphis. I mean, up until I started teaching it, maybe 2005. I think Cheap Thrills 05 was the first time I taught classes outside of California in that dance. And so there was nobody outside of people who were either my partner or my students who knew those dances that was less than 60 years old and from Memphis. And every single time I've met somebody who is older than 60 years old and does that dance is either from Memphis or learned it from somebody in Memphis. I was in Denver at a roadhouse listening to a blues band maybe in 2006 or 2007, and an older white couple was strutting. And they did like 3 or 4 songs in a row, and I walked over. I'm like, where did you learn that dance? And like, oh, we learned it from some friends of ours. And I'm like,
are they from Memphis?
Yeah, I'm like, really? Like, where are they from? I'm like, oh, well, it's this older black couple from Memphis. Okay, because for a second there, I was going to have to rewrite everything I knew about this dance. But yeah, as far as I can tell, it was only done in
40s and 50s.
Well, as far as I can tell, it started really around, at least with outside of a particular like club. It started somewhere in the early 40s and got popular in the 50s, moving all the way into the 60s. That's my understanding. Most of the people that I learned it from would qualify as the second generation later Stratton. So Stratton actually parallels Balboa really closely. The old school, like first generation of dancers only dancing close embrace. They never left. With the new school, the young whippersnappers, which were my great aunts and uncles, they did, these like badass off-center turns and breakaway steps as flash moves. So I watch older people do these dances, and I'm like, okay, I can guess how old you are based on whether or not are based specifically on the style that you're dancing. But Frankie used to talk about how you could watch somebody swing out and you could tell what high school they went to. Balboa was the same way.
That's so awesome.
Depending on how you did your basic step. Did you hold up or did you hold down? Were you from Long Beach or were you from, like San Diego? Or it's just like, so back then it was really, really, just like the music, geography driven.
Yeah.
So Barry is from Detroit, Michigan. I honestly don't remember where Bridget grew up, but the more important thing is not so much where she grew up, but where her family is from.
I know her family lives in Portland now, so I think West Coast.
Yeah. So their style of blues and Barry's style of blues were not the same. And neither of those are from Memphis or Chicago or New York. And my family members that I learned from are from those places.
So Troughton and Peabody, like stuff that I've never learned before and that I watched her try to demonstrate. I watched her demonstrate and didn't quite get all of the elements in her brief demo. Where do those come from?
Oh God.
If you don't know, I can ask her.
I used to know the history of Peabody, but I can't remember exactly what city it's from. I want to say it's somewhere from the Northeast. But Peabody is actually a relatively understood dance. It's the originator of the quick step. I do know that the canonical understanding of Peabody is that there's a guy whose last name is Peabody who danced, in a round line of dance, and he was round. And so when he danced, he would move his partner pretty much just around his circumference as he danced. And that's where the movements and shapes and stuff comes from. I would not think of Peabody as a blues dance. I would call Peabody a ballroom style swing dance. It's definitely a ragtime music dance. But slow drag was originally done to ragtime music also. Blues music is a mix of ragtime, Negro spirituals, and work songs. That's where blues music comes from. It's from those three poles. So it is not at all surprising that some people did, these things that some of us think of as blues dances to other music that was part of the originators of this stuff. So as far as why they would not know what ballrooming is, because ballrooming is a contemporary name. Yes. It is, factually speaking, not a dance unto itself. What usually is being referred to if somebody is saying ballrooming and they don't mean the genre of blues dances done to big band blues style music in ballrooms, if they're referring to a specific dance, they're usually talking about the Savoy Walk.
The what?
The Savoy Walk, which was a dance done in the Savoy Ballroom during the 40s. And you can take a look at clips of The Spirit Moves, which I believe is actually now available for purchase online if you do a little bit of research for it. And there's a whole clip of Sugar Sullivan dancing this. And most of my concepts of ballroom come from Sugar and Norma Miller, another original Lindy Hopper.
There's only 3 DVDs that are available. The rest of them are in the Library of Congress. But yeah, it's great stuff. But some of it's like some of the documentaries that we've seen. It's a little, and it really sets me off that they've put different music to what the people were originally dancing to. And sometimes
what I can tell you about that, well, I mean, music rights then are not much different than now. I mean, you see stuff on YouTube get yanked or have the music stripped out of it. Like you can watch the thing, or we can put some other kind of music on, and it's exactly the same deal back then. So you could only play the music that you own the rights to, or that you leased the rights to. But my understanding from other historians, particularly people who actually interviewed Murrah Den, and from having talked to Sugar and George Sullivan, was that the music that was played was representative of what they danced to, though it was not what they danced to. So like Hell's a Poppin', one of the most famous Lindy Hop scenes of all time, was not danced to that song. It was danced to a completely different song.
So how come we don't call it Savoy Walk?
Some of us do. So Joy and I teach classes that very specifically say Savoy Walk on them. But when we say, we're teaching ballrooming, what we talk about is the same way of me saying, I'm teaching juking, which is I'm going to teach one or more dances that fall underneath the greater umbrella of ballrooming. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Were the ballroom style dances done line of dance? Or
some of them were. Not all of them. They all traveled, but they were not all line of dance dances.
Which ones are line of dance?
My understanding is that the original Savoy Walk was that it stopped being line of dance in the later 40s. And that by the time the video or the documentary was being filmed, which was 1950, being released in 51, if I remember my years correctly, it was only really done in an area rather than constant traveling. So like, I might dance with my partner in a space this big. Other people would also be in and out of this space, but it's very different than say, the Lindy Hop, which would be like these 3 squares up to about like here, and that's the space that I'm doing all of my moves in. So.
As someone who teaches, and I think a lot of us were organizers in some way or another, we're all trying to grow our scenes and explain what blues dancing is. I would like to hear how you would tell someone fresh off the street who's never danced what blues dancing is.
That's a great question.
Oh gosh. Context matters. I did in fact.
I literally repeat
I did in fact was one of the 2 major contributors for the Wikipedia article. So it's pretty locked away. If you're squared down, if you're like having something that is a little bit more academic, we can read with references. You can go there, and it's pretty active. But context matters. Is this someone asking me that question after having just seen me dance at a non-dance event? Like, is there a blues band out there, and my fiance and I get out there and we dance, and someone comes up and goes, "What was that?"
So they've already seen it versus having not seen it.
Or not seen it and showed up because they saw a dance lesson or a free dance lesson was being taught, or somebody and their significant other decides that they want to be romantic and go take dance lessons together. Like, there's all sorts of different contexts, and that question can be asked. And I say it matters because you want to give them the information that they want, as well as the information that they need for them to make the decision whether it's a thing that they might be interested in.
So I'll give you the one that I run into the most. As an educator, I'm around a bunch of teachers and I'll explain like a little facet of my life. Oh yeah, I go blues dancing on Fridays. The immediate next question is, what is blues dance?
Yeah.
Okay. In that context, this is the kind of thing I said. Oh, well, blues dancing, it's a bunch of dances that are done to blues music. The same way that swing dancing is done to swing dance music, and Latin dancing is done to Latin music. It's not just one dance, it's a bunch of dances. And I just like leave it there. That is just enough information for them to go, yeah, okay, I know what blues music is. That's a dun. So the way that you dance to that, okay, cool. Like that's enough in that context for them to go, oh. And then if they want more information, then you're like, okay, now there's an opportunity.
Here's the card.
This blues dance on Friday.
So like that is the sort of thing that I do, is I give them just enough for them to get the context of the statement that I just made, and no more unless they show any kind of interest. And by any kind of interest, I mean literally any kind of interest. Like, oh, here we go. But also it's like, oh yeah, because I used to do swing dancing, back in 1998, when I was a freshman in college or high school or whatever the hell it was, oh yeah, because I do tango or I do Latin or whatever. And they're like, oh, you're a dancer. I can give you more specific information about like concepts of the movement, words that will give you an idea, paint a picture, but for somebody who's just mildly curious about like, oh, I've never heard of that, what is that? Then you don't want to overwhelm them because that just sort of pushes them away. So which is different than someone coming to something like this and asking, so what actually is blues dancing?
So what actually is blues dancing?
Blues dancing, as I define it, is the contemporary shorthand name for blues idiom dance. And blues idiom dance is the family of dances that were created alongside of and danced to blues music.
Can you say that again?
Well, yes, I can. Blues dance is a contemporary shorthand for blues idiom dance, and blues idiom dance are the family of dances that were done, that grew up alongside and were done to blues music. And that is as technical as anyone should ever have to be to describe it. Now, we could get far more technical with like, and this is what blues music is, and those elements that create blues music create this kind of movement, and they are intimately tied together. Like we could go in more and more depth and break these things down if necessary. But the statement in and of itself means if I understand what makes blues music means that the people are dancing to those elements, and that's what makes it blues dancing or blues idiom dance. Does that make sense?
Can you talk more about how movement choices might change based on like different related genres, like you might see here this weekend?
Well, coincidentally, right after this, or shortly after this, Kelsey and I are going to be teaching a class in how to dance to stolen R&B. And since everybody's in this room, I'm assuming you all have a background in blues dance, which means a bunch of the things that we are going to teach you and say at you and get you to move are going to seem incredibly similar. And then every once in a while, you're going to go, because it's going to be just different enough that it's going to throw you. Essentially, the elements that we teach in blues dancing as your fundamentals, things that create the blues aesthetic, are the things that are intimately tied to the music. So your posture. Well, first off, the four things that define the aesthetic for any partner dance are your posture, And this is the order of priority, of importance.
Awesome.
So posture, physical connection, pulse. And pulse, as I define it, is the physical expression of the baseline rhythm of the music. Right. Now I say that as pulse because that was how the blues dancers who taught me referred to that movement. It's like it's the pulse, it's the heartbeat of music. You gotta have a heart. Where's your heart?
Okay, say it again. Never mind.
There isn't.
So it's not a literal pulse necessarily.
No, it's absolutely it's a physical expression of the music. Now I say that because Danielle brought up Brenda and Barry, and both of them they have ballroom backgrounds, so pulse to them means something different.
Oh,
So my understanding of that is that just from what Heather has said, Heather is an organizer in Seattle. She's in charge of teaching. Pendulum pulse comes from African movement. That's where she is like dead set on pendulum pulse, and that's why. I don't know what you think about that, but figured she's a student of Brenda, so I figured I'd toss that out there. You deal with it.
Because I'm gonna stick with the distinction here.
Okay.
Because pulse in a ballroom fashion means a very specific kind of movement. So the idea of pendulum pulse, that is not African. Like that phrase does not.
You say that?
Absolutely.
Heather?
that phrase does not exist in Africa. Like that is very much a English designation of a kind of movement. They would refer to as the up-down as resiliency, right? But the old-time blues dancers refer to any physical expression of the baseline rhythm in music as your pulse. It doesn't matter if it's up and down or in and out or sideways, it's all the pulse. Because it was not an intellectualized dance. When they talk about
just
pulse,
dancing.
yeah. When they talk about pulse, they literally meant. I mean, you've seen, everybody here has seen like Dirty Dancing, right? The pulse, dun, dun, dun. It's a pulse to music. Like that is the most visceral way of getting an understanding of what the lifeblood of the song is. What is driving everything, right? And so you are expressing that in some fashion in your body, and therefore it is your pulse. The pulse of the music is the pulse of your body. So it's not specifically one thing or another, as I was taught by the dancers that I knew, right? And most of them come from Memphis. Two of them come from Chicago, and one of the people from Memphis spent her summers in New York and Harlem dancing at the Savoy. So, and of course, then there's Norma and Sugar, who are also New York. So that is what I learned from them. You should not mistake that as the gospel, that every blues dancer across the country at any given, decade meant it and said it the exact same way. They have entirely different things. And so it's really important to understand that where Brenda says a thing, and Barry says a thing, and I say a thing, and Heidi says a thing, and Joy says a thing, and they may sound completely contradictory, but it's really important to listen to what is being said and understand the intent behind it, and literally what is being expressed. And then you will find that most of the time we agree probably greater than 99% of the time when you understand what we're saying versus just hearing the words, right? So Barry and I did a series of talks in Seattle at a time when everybody swore that A, that we hated each other, and B, that we constantly were badmouthing each other, and C, that we disagreed on every aspect of blues. And if you watch these, and they're all available on YouTube, we disagree on nothing. We're pretty good friends, and our backgrounds are almost exactly the same, just from different places.
Yeah.
Literally our dance backgrounds are almost identical. So, it's just that we use different words because we come from different places.
Or different definitions.
Could we just search y'all's names?
I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Barry Douglas, Damon Stone. You put them into YouTube and it will come up.
Fourth quality.
Yeah.
The fourth one is timing. How you and your partner are timed together and how you as a couple or individually are timed with the music. So in blues, we talk about an athletic posture, right? Weight on the balls of your feet, knees bent, shoulders forward, hips back. We call that athletic because when you're moving in an athletic manner, there's a ball, go kick the ball. You don't have to stop and think about what it is that I need to do to make that happen. You just run and you kick the ball and your body takes that shape naturally because that's how you're built to move when it needs to be quick with the ability to change direction, on the drop of a hat. When we talk about a physical connection with blues, we talk about relaxed arms, relaxed body. If the word frayed is being mentioned in any way, shape, or form, it is frequently being said in a form of relaxed rest. Allow your body to support itself structurally rather than with your muscles.
Right. When you're saying relaxed, I've seen the confusion happen when you say relaxed and they're thinking ragdoll, or they're thinking about not keeping core involved in that. Can you
Well, the specific here that we're talking about is the physical connection. In order to maintain a posture, you have to have your core engaged. Right? And again, as I said, these are the level of priority. So posture is always first. Nothing interrupts your posture, ever. Right? Your posture is dictated based on what you intend to do. Then your physical connection comes next. Right? So I can have relaxed arms and still have my posture only because I'm engaging with my abdominals. Right? My glutes, my quads, these are my calves. They're engaging enough to keep me from turning into a puddle on the floor. I don't want to be engaged any more than what it takes to maintain that flexible posture. So then we have pulse, physical expression based on rhythm and music. I teach it as a vertical height change with a downward emphasis. And the reason why is because the structure of our bodies is done in a hinge-like fashion. Right? We have ball joints, but from a linear kind of travel or a in-place travel, the body is a series of hinges. And in order to move or swing or twist or rotate, most of it is going to involve having to create a height change first. So if I'm standing straight up and I want to swing my hips forward from here, I have to bend at the knee, I have to arch my back, or if I'm going to swing my hips back, I have to bend at the knee and I have to come forward. But the bending at the knee creates a down. The coming forward, coming back lowers my height. So I teach a vertical height change first because everything else involves that. If I teach not vertical height change, but teach you to get used to the idea of a forward and back, and you end up with a song that is asking you to do a slow drag, or a song that is asking you to strut. You're going to try and do this, and it's not going to come out. It's just not going to work. But if I get you to do this, and then I just show you, okay, and now we're going to do, fishtail, your body's like, oh, I see that. He's coming down for this movement, and then swinging around, and this is the pulse. But it still involves a vertical height change.
So basically, different pulses for different dances.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So that's what I teach that. That's not to say that that's the best way. I've just given you my reason for why I teach it the way that I do.
Pendulum made sense to me when I was taking Brenda's classes, but actually the downward motion makes sense as well.
Sure, it should, because each of our teaching styles is contingent on a specific paradigm.
Right.
And so all the dances that I teach will be, and the way that I teach them will be easier for you if you've learned how to do a downward pulse. Right? And for Brenda or for Barry, all of what they teach and how they teach is geared to the idea of a forward pulse. And when they want you to do resiliency, and they will teach that to you in context of that specific thing.
So when you're talking about that, you're differentiating between blues and Lindy, and people are asking you questions when you're trying to explain blues dance. And you're talking about the pulse instead of a pendulum swing, when you're talking about the downward motion of that. When you're talking about Lindy, you would be talking about more of an upward pulse.
No.
No.
In my world, if you were doing Lindy Hop, you should have a downward pulse also.
Oh, okay.
But this is where we have to start talking about emphasis. When I say down, or I say pendulum, or I say lateral, I'm referring to the most obvious visual point of emphasis. Not necessarily what is required to make your body do the thing. Okay. So, slow drag to a lot of people looks like an up dance. So it does this. But for me, the emphasis of the body is the drop up. Up the ramp, off the cliff. Up the ramp, off the cliff. So to me, slow drag is a downward emphasized dance because the body's going up, but the power is in the down. It is in that recovery and the crack, recover, crack, recover, crack. So I call it a downward emphasis dance.
So when I explain that to people, I often emphasize that a lot is because the dance is a relaxed dance. It's a lot easier for me to go down. There's a lot more effort to once you relax, your body is going to be a lot more grounded.
It's called gravity, right? It just works with you, right?
I do all the time, like gravity is there.
Yeah.
But again, this follows my own personal teaching methodology, right? My own paradigm. I know other people who teach other ways, and because every aspect of their teaching is geared towards that, they will still get you to do the exact right thing in the exact right way. So again, you may even hear us using opposite words, but the important thing is, what do we mean by them? What is that we're demonstrating? And when we say that you're doing it correctly, is this person, and that person all saying you're doing the same thing correctly, even though they would describe it using completely different words?
Yeah.
It's the result that matters.
And that's why I say take basics, take them again, take them from many people. Just
You don't know who's going to click
Right.
or when it's going to click,
Right.
which is why you should take basics first.
Yeah, there's no other planet you shouldn't be taking basic, right?
Yeah. So the last aspect for blues is the context of timing. And for blues, it's the lag, the idea that I, as a leader, am dancing in response to the music rather than anticipation of it. Like, I know where the music's going to hit, but it's so much easier for me to sink into it and have a meaty kind of interaction with it if I'm, quote unquote, in the pocket rather than driving it, right? And rhythmic propulsion versus, rhythmic tension. It's this idea, it's the music constantly feeling like it's pushing me, throwing me into that next step, or does it feel like the music is almost dragging me into the next step?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's just concepts. So that's me as a leader. Me as a follower, I am not concerned with where my body is at any given time or where it is going. I'm concerned with what shapes I'm creating in the space I'm currently occupying. So I'm dancing to what I'm hearing in the music and allowing my body to respond in the most intuitive way, the least intellectualized fashion possible to my leader's transfer of momentum. So I don't want to anticipate the step, I want to anticipate the shape of movement that is going to best accentuate the things that I'm hearing in the music that I can create within the space that the leader is physically carving out on the dance floor with me.
Which explains exactly why it's hard for people to understand blues dance. Because, for example, when it used to be at the coffee shop in Austin, I took my parents one day because I had to talk to somebody, and they were parked in the car watching everyone dance. And I came out, and they said, "Are they all dancing to the same song?" That explains right there.
Well, there's a lot of things that could be.
Well, true.
We're going to assume that everybody at Kick Butt was kicking butt.
Kicking butt and
doing the right thing the right way. In which case, it's like, are the leader and follower dancing to the same song? Are they even dancing together? Because it looks like they're just touching and each having their own dance. And if you're doing it right, it really should be that.
Yeah.
It should be the case of, I'm dancing to the music the way that I hear, with my concept of lead being dominant.
Right. It's a conversation. It's not a.
Yeah. And then as a follower, it is me dancing the music that I hear, with my role as follower being dominant, meaning anything that I hear in the music that I want to move to, I can do so pretty much in any fashion I want, as long as it's subservient to my role as follower. And it's the exact same thing as a leader. I can do pretty much anything I want to the music as long as it is subservient to my role as leader, meaning that I have to give my partner something, regardless of which role I'm in. The concept is, I got your back, you got my back. I don't need to worry about my back. She's got my back.
Right.
I don't need to worry about myself. I need to worry about her. She doesn't worry about herself. She worries about me. And that way you make your partner the center of your universe, and you don't have to be selfish in it. You are a team working together to give, the best connection to the music as you can, the best honoring what's going on. Because that's what the musicians are doing, right? Mm-hmm. The drummer is not like, stupid guitars. Come on. The drummer is just like, okay, my job is to lay down, this groove so that the guitarist can play off of it. The guitar player is not doing the exact same notes, with the same exact rhythm that the guitar player is doing. They're doing different things. They're layering what they're doing, and it's complementary, and it's not in conflict. At least not if you have a band that knows what they're doing. And that's how we should be as dancers, right? You are dancing to one part of the song, and I'm dancing to a different part of the song, and together we're honoring the whole thing. If you and I are dancing to the exact same part of the song in the exact same fashion, it's like, I love this sweet cream ice cream that is literally just milk and ice and sugar and the flavor of lactose.
The flavor of lactose.
Get some vanilla in there, or some chocolate, or strawberry, or balsamic vinegar. And you start, but the flavor and the mixing of the different components is what makes it good, right? Nobody is like, what I really want for dinner? I want salt. I want something salty, but there's got to be other flavors in there, and the salt becomes sort of like a unifying theme, right? That the soy sauce, that umami, that's the thing that kind of holds it together. You've got a bunch of different things, and that's how we should be on the dance floor.
Follow-up question to that comment. So when you see two people in a competition, or else even though just on the social dance floor, just keeping it social. Sure. And they do the same thing at the exact same time. It's kind of one of those magic moments where they obviously read each other's mind or read the music the exact same way. I mean, there's still. Again, I don't know what my question is. I keep hoping you'll interrupt me.
I will comment on the words that came out of your mouth rather than waiting on the question. There's a difference between when you and I hit on the same things, we heard the music the same way and moved in the exact same kind of response, and then I am physically moving you around the floor as my role as leader, and you are allowing me to physically move you around the floor as your role of follower, and everything that happens because of my movement, and I'm not adding anything actually musical, I'm just on beat.
I understand that.
Awesome.
Right?
So I have a direction I'd love to move this conversation in.
Sure.
But before I do, I want to make sure that we don't have any prepared questions that, for people who haven't asked a question yet, that haven't been answered yet. So I would love us to touch on a little bit of just what you know about origins of blues music and origins of blues idiom dances, as opposed to what we talked about, the harangue origins of what our subculture calls blues dance these days.
Right. Well, I think the important thing I think the important thing to remember about how blues dance became a thing today amongst our community is to understand and honor that idea of we are trying to capture the spirit of the blues. We are not trying to recreate blues dancing. Like that was never their original goal. It was trying to capture the spirit. And I think that is a perfectly legitimate use of, blues night or blues room. In the same way that I might, but we have themes here this weekend, right? Nobody here has to actually go and become a spy through the CIA or the KGB or I know all those years.
That's a lot of money wasted.
The idea, it's not like there's going to be traps all over the floor and, things like that. You're going to have people trying to assassinate you. Those aren't really going to happen, but it is possible to have a themed night where you're trying to encapsulate like the just general concepts that we hold. Like, when you say spy, you're like spy night, super spy night, you're like, oh, okay. So like you start thinking about like James Bond, or maybe you start thinking about our man Flint, or the man from U.N.C.L.E., depending on how much Nickelodeon and TV Land you watch, or just how old you are.
I was about to say.
But, those ideas, suave, or sexy, or debonair, or dangerous. And so you're trying to bring those things in as a theme. And that's what they were doing. And I think that's really important because most of you wouldn't be here right now if they hadn't thought that the concept of blues and what that feeling was not something worth trying to emulate. Because it was that made people interested in blues music, which was being played at the time. It was just not the majority of the music.
Right.
And so as the music got to be more and more blues, the people who were actually listening to music as they dance, their dancing naturally gravitated more and more towards blues. So I want to make sure that it is that we understand that we owe that concept a huge debt.
Yes.
So where blues music comes from, as I mentioned, blues music pretty much owns itself from rag music or ragtime music, from Negro spirituals, which I use that term very specifically, versus gospel or black spiritual music, because that is how they refer to themselves and how they refer to that music, and therefore it creates a very specific circle in this Venn diagram. There is other stuff that would fall into the broader circle that lies nowhere near, nor is a component of blues music. So when I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No.
Because it wasn't just about religion, it was about life. It was just, like you're saying, growing up in it. For me, finding blues music in Austin was like, I walked in and I was like, I'm originally from New Orleans. For me, it was like, I'm home.
Yeah.
I found my people and I'm good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we have ragtime, we have Negro spirituals, and we have work songs / field hollers. And those are the three, as I said, the three poles. So if you created, a circle of each of those where, you now have a Venn diagram where they overlap are the places that create the blues.
Would you say it's the place where all three of them overlap, or even an overlap between two?
I would say where all three overlap forms our purest understanding of blues and the things that academics and historians would all agree as being blues music. the places where you have two and not the third, some people would disagree. There are things that musicians from the Piedmont area musicians of their day, who play Piedmont blues that falls within all three, would say, and this thing over here is also us.
Okay.
But someone over here might go, no, that's not us.
Where would minstrel show music go under? Would that be under slavery work songs?
I wouldn't say that is part of the Venn diagram that forms blues. I would say that is something that kind of has just an overlap with.
Okay.
Does that make sense? It does not contribute directly into the blues in the formation. It overlaps a number of things, also some of which is absolutely considered blues. So if you listen to some of old minstrel music, you would go, yeah, that's blues music. And you listen to another song by the same people, and you go, yeah, that's definitely not blues. But it's absolutely within the same aesthetic of minstrel music. I think it's probably easier to say that minstrel shows, carnival tent shows, medicine shows, all of these kinds of things had people who either played blues music or what we might refer to as proto blues, before blues was being called blues, were all being played in those places.
Because it was just like.
There's a spot, and this is where people who are anti-purist like to make an argument of like, oh, it's all gray. There's so, you can't draw lines. It's just, whatever you want it to be, and it's not. You can very clearly draw lines and go, everything right here is blues. There may also be some stuff out here that are on the edges that are cross genres or are transitional from blues into something else or from something else into blues. But just because there is gray doesn't mean that there is not black and there is not white. Right? So we can talk about these things, in the black, we can talk about these things in the white, and we can talk about the gray, but it's really important to understand that there is a kernel of music that every blues musician and every academic, every ethnomusicologist will recognize unmistakably as blues. And I personally, as a DJ and as a teacher and as an event organizer, insist that the majority, the plurality of the music being played is that music, is the unmitigated, unhyphenated, pure blues. And then I want everything else that you play in your set to be blues adjacent or hyphenated.
Yes.
Right, so your jazz blues, your soul blues, your rhythm and blues, all of those things, you're welcome to play, in my events. Those are the things that I would play in my classes. Those are the things that I would dance to, and not complain if I've gone to a place that advertises itself as a blues dance night, and that's the music that's being played. But again, it's that distinction between we are trying to have the feel of the blues versus have the blues. And I think it's always an important thing as organizers, as DJs, as teachers, to know what your definitions are and understand how the words that you use in your marketing are going to shape the expectations of people around you. Right. And almost more importantly, shape the impressions of people who don't know better.
Right.
Right.
And so, obviously, that's a big discussion that the Blues Association of Austin has had to have, and some of the discussions we've had to have are things like, if we were called the Dance Association of Austin, I wouldn't have a problem with this, but we're called the Blues Association of Austin, and therefore, I feel we should be more authentic in what we're putting forth because it uses that term blues.
I'll be honest, I rarely use the term authentic for a couple different reasons. One is, for some people, it carries a lot of baggage. For whatever reason, at some point, that word was used in relation to something that put them on the outside, and so they see it as an insult of some sort, of belittling of who they are or what they do.
Gotcha.
It's also the reason why I push back on anyone who says blues fusion or alt blues, and like, look, it's blues where it's not. You know, is the music blues music? Is the dancing blues dancing? I can take inspiration from anywhere.
Sure.
You know, I have studied kizomba, I have studied bachata, I've studied salsa, mambo, tango. You know, I already talked about, you know, my misfit youth as, you know, a break dancer and West Coast funk and stuff like that. I will take inspiration from that. I'm also a martial artist, and so I take inspiration out of that and I use it in my dancing. But does the things that I'm doing with it fit within the blues aesthetic? And if it does, then it's blues, period. It's not blues fusion, it's just blues. It's not alternative blues, it's just blues. So it's either blues or it's not. Is this color blue or is the color green? It could be blue-green or green-blue, but there's a distinction between those two things.
But if it's not dance to blues music and it's still in the blues aesthetic, do you call it blues?
That would depend on whether or not it is also being danced to the actual music being played.
Yeah, so as long as it's musical.
If it fits the music being played and it fits the blues aesthetic, even if the song being played is not blues, I would say it's a blues idiom dance.
Okay.
These dances were not static, right? And that's part of the reason why I don't like the term authentic. It's also the reason why I don't like the word purist. I'm not a purist. You know, I'm not a recreationist. I believe blues is a living tradition. And like all traditions, they change and evolve over time. I'm not trying to go, well, this is the way that this dance was done in 1898. And that is the only way that this dance can be done. Because I could go down to Spelman and, it's a Saturday night, go to one of the Alpha house parties, and a slow song comes on, and everybody there will be slow dragging. And you will recognize it as the slow drag. It's going to have a whole lot of extra stuff around it, because the music they're dancing to is like, you know, it's going to be a little bit different than, you know, straight up blues. But you will, oh yeah, that's slow drag. You know, is it blues? Maybe not. Depends. Is it Al Green they're dancing to, or is it Chris Brown? You know, is it, you know, Shaheen, or is it R. Kelly? You know, that matters. So one of my favorite songs to play as a DJ and as a teacher, and one of my favorite songs to dance to for blues, is a song by Kedmo called Give Me What You Got. It is not blues. It's a rhythm and blues song. It happens to have all the necessary elements that defines a song as blues. It also has a bunch of fundamental elements that don't match blues, but instead match rhythm and blues. And they're not in conflict, which is why it allows to have these other things. But it has these other things as part of its fundamental nature, which is why it's not blues. Right? And so when I dance to it, because it has all the things I need it for blues, my dancing is blues most of the time. But there's also these elements that make it rhythm and blues. And so depending on who I'm dancing with and what I'm feeling like in that moment, my dancing might not be blues. Even if I'm doing what you'd recognize as a blues dance step, if I'm letting go of certain parts of the blues aesthetic and I'm shifting to the parts that are the rhythm of blues aesthetic, my dancing could cross that line. And maybe crisscross that line back and forth in the same song. because the song supports all of it. Does that make sense?
So in a group, like I'm thinking of like groups in the Northwest that have blues fusion nights or fusion or all blues nights. Without that title on it, if you were to enter a room that had some blues music, some non-blues music, a lot of dancers who you could tell were trained in blues and did blues idiom dancing, and then they'd incorporate other stuff too. Like, what would you call that?
Dancing.
What would you call that?
I mean, what do we call what we were doing last night?
Dancing.
There was 80s and 90s hip hop, there was 80s and 90s R&B, there was 60s soul, there was, there was 70s funk,
It's
there was
called get up
disco.
the dance
I mean,
floor and shake it. There's not a...
I call that a dance party. And I call the things that we were doing to that dancing. I find the need to label things in that kind of context disingenuous in some cases, and in other cases just intellectually dishonest. This starts going into the concepts of appropriation. Like, there's no such thing as alt blues. Alt blues, alt's short for alternative. If it's an alternative to blues, then it's not blues. I mean, because otherwise it would be blues music, right? So the music is not that thing, and therefore the dancing is not really alt blues either. You could say, yeah, this is a dance that I do, that I take all the things that I have learned in blues dance classes and I apply it to this music that is not blues. That may hit me in a lot of the same ways. It might have that bluesy feel, and I don't mean as in the music sounds like blues. I mean like it's slow. It is rhythmically dominant. It is emotionally evocative, and maybe it has some sort of sense of rhythmic tension in there. But that doesn't make it blues. So even if I take all the things that I know, and I don't mix anything else, and I dance it to that music, when I dance it to that music, it's not blues. I've changed it to something else. Slow drag was a dance done to multiple kinds of music. Pete body is a dance done to multiple kinds of music. Funky bop is a dance done to multiple kinds of music. So you have a concept of a specific dance step, of a basic way of doing a thing, and then you change elements of it to match the music. So blues dance is not an individual dance. Blues dance is a genre of dance that matches a genre of music. If someone was saying, we're doing contemporary slow drag, and what they played was, Portishead or Sheba, Glory Box. I mean, they start playing this kind of stuff, and they're like, yeah, we're doing contemporary slow drag. I'm like, yeah, you are doing the fuck out of it. Awesome. You wouldn't hear a peep from me because the physical structure, the moves, the timing, what they're doing match that specific dance. It does not match the genre of blues. And that's a distinction that I have, as of yet, not been able to get any of the organizers and DJs to understand. More and more of the dancers who are still active in the blues dance community are coming around. And every year, more and more of them start to understand that concept. Because it's not, frankly, it's not based on opinion. This is not, it's not right because it's my opinion. It's my opinion because it's right. This is literally how these sorts of things are divided on a, categorical level. When you talk to an ethnomusicologist, and they'll say, these things are what define this kind of music. And we can take a look at all of these music forms and artists who led into the creation of this, and we can track these elements. You can see when new things get added and woven in and other things sort of fall away, but we can see a constant stream through, and that's how we know that this thing is this thing. And when it starts to change, it goes from blues to rhythm and blues. So I would say what they're doing is dancing. Some of it's really awesome. It's in the music that plays stuff I love to dance to. I just get annoyed with the constant attempts by some specific people to associate it with this thing that it is not. And they haven't taken the time to recognize where those distinctions are and the importance of it from a cultural perspective. I mean, this is a living tradition, this is a cultural art form. And to take that thing and say that we're doing that thing and think that, oh, but if I put this little appellation on it to show how it's different from that thing, but somehow still try and gain the street cred of being blues is, I find it highly questionable. I question their motives. I also question the marketing. Just from a purely business standpoint, you're much better off to go, I've created this dance thing, and I'm going to name it, I'm going to brand it, and I'm going to put it out there. I mean, that's how things like Ciroc became a billion-dollar industry with instructors all over the world who are licensed to be able to teach that. Like, it actually makes far more sense because, as Chihiro's talking about, you have this idea of like, oh, I do blues, or I do alt blues. That doesn't mean anything to anybody who doesn't already know about this thing. So you have to explain it anyway.
Right.
So why not be able to say, yeah, I do this thing called slow groove, which is what I call my style of that dancing. And, I've taught slow groove, and it's gotten me gigs in London, it's gotten me gigs in Korea, it's gotten me gigs in Mexico and, Australia. I mean, why not just say, this thing is my thing. I'm the one who does this. If you got to explain it to anybody, it's really about that point then a catchy name, something that you can then say, this is why it's awesome and why you should learn it. You're going to have to say those things regardless of whether you call it blues or, call it, kizomba, if you call it, you're going to have to explain it to someone who didn't grow up with that sort of thing. So just lay claim and credit for the thing that you've created. And you can always pay homage to the people who inspired you and who taught you. I certainly, don't try to lay claim to anything that I haven't specifically created myself or taught myself how to do. But, when I start talking about strutting, I talk about, my great aunt Mary and my great uncle Howard, and, this is what I learned from them. When I talk about ballrooming, I talk about, my great aunt Mary, I talk about Norma Miller, I talk about Sugar Sullivan, George Sullivan, because these are the people who taught me, and I want you guys to be able to go and respect them as much as I do, right? So, I can be like, this is what I am about, and this is what I'm teaching, and this is where I got these ideas from, and I'm giving you my version of it, because the way I do my blues dances are my ways, right? They are not exact replicas of, other people. And every once in a while, I'll teach something exactly the way I was taught. From a physical, structural level that I have not added anything to. And I'm usually really clear, this is this thing. I do a Delta style slow drag class. I'm then teaching a very specific style that I learned from a specific group of people in a specific place that comes from a specific time. Or I could teach a generic slow drag class, in which case you need Damon's style of slow drag. So, I am a big believer in, truth in advertising, making sure people know what they're going to get, and then laying claim for the credit that you deserve for the things that you've done, and giving credit for those people who inspired you and taught you and got you to where you were. I think that is the respectful thing. It's slow groove, it is my style of taking all this blues dance stuff and doing it to this non-blues music. And I think it's awesome, and you should do it with me, and we'll see if we have fun, right? And you'll be like, oh my God, this is amazing. Where can I get classes in this? I'm like, well, since I created it, I'm the only one. And you're like, okay, when are you coming to Austin next? Or when are you coming to Seattle next? Or wherever you're going. But that's it. I'm the source. If you want it, you got to come from me. It just makes far more sense from a business perspective. But it also makes sense from that cultural respect. Anything else? Anyone else?
Since we're all kind of instructors or organizers or something, is there some big takeaway you'd like us to have from like what is blues, what is blues dancing?
The big takeaway. I am not a source of blues dancing. I am not the source of blues dancing. I did not make.
We have that recorded.
I did not make this stuff up. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to listen to me. But I have a series of resources that you can go and you can read these books and you can watch these videos. And after having done those things, you can come back to me and we can have a discussion. And if you still disagree with the things that I've said, then we can have a real, honest to God academic discussion on this. But to date, pretty much everybody who's gone through all these sources that I give them is like, okay, I've read like 4 of the books and seen, the spirit moves, and I'm done. I give up. You're correct. Because it's not stuff that you don't need me for this stuff. At best, I am one of the bridges to the original culture and community. But so's Brenda. So's Barry. So I am not unique in that. There are lots of resources out there. I mean, we're in deep Ellum. This place has got so much history in regards to Texas blues. It's freaking crazy. You can still find people in Austin. You can still find people in Dallas, in New Orleans. You can find people all over who dance to this stuff, and you can talk to them. You're going to have to learn how to translate things a little bit like that. Oh, yeah, it's an 8 count.
Right?
But once you actually sit down and have these conversations, the stuff, the evidence is just overwhelming. And that which contradicts it and refutes it is not. So.
Where do we find these aforementioned resources?
Hey!
I was going to say, but I was going to ask that. Too lazy to do research. Could you dump that in my lap, please?
I don't know if Nick told you, but we've been doing viewing parties in Austin where we're watching documentaries and concerts and movies, all based around the blues. And so more information would be awesome.
Hey, Facebook.
Okay.
There is a Facebook group specifically for videos run by Chris Harm, and it's the Blues Room. And you look that up, and you should have no problem finding it. And there's all sorts of clips of vintage dancing, specifically blues idiom dance. So that's the place for that. As far as my reading list, DamonStone.dance. And there's a reading list there, and it will have all the books that I recommend, some of which are very specific to African American vernacular dance, across the century and a half now, stuff that we would recognize as being things like blues and swing, and some of them are on the surface just like weird things. Games black girls play. Like, why is that on his reading list? Read the book, find out. But it's got some really, really relevant stuff.
I didn't know I played specific games.
Double Dutch.
Oh, I do.
If we are not friends on Facebook, feel free to add me, and if you have questions that pop up, I'll be more than happy to try and answer them to the best of my knowledge.
He is quite responsive.
Yeah, and again, you don't have to just take my word for these things. I welcome respectful and informed dissent. And if you were not informed, I will then say, go read this and this, and then come back to me, and we can continue if you are arguing a specific point. And then after you've read it, then we can have a discussion. Because I don't want you to take my word for these things. It's actually just easier for me to flat out say it. I prefer that you be skeptics. I prefer that you question and do your own research. Because it makes having the conversation easier when we have the same language, when we are coming from the same educational background in regards to what can be proven to have happened in a given place at a given time, as stated by multiple sources. It makes the conversation easier. All right.
Yay.